Ohami, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I look forward to today's moment with Ra, so all I'll say is let's set sail for the Ra-verse. And I will see you all on the flip side. Greetings. We are the Ra, and we stand here together with the gatekeepers at the entrance of our verse, joyfully imagining and expecting the return of you, our sibling species, the Da. Welcome, and please enter and make way to the great passage where our unified consciousness shall greet you. Ohami. I am Ra, and I greet you as collectively we rejoice in the living love and in the living light of this, the beloved, infinite Creator Self and the Creator Whole. We are pleased to observe your return to this moment of learn, teaching, and teach learning. Once again, welcome to the Great Passage. I hope that you have enjoyed your so-called homework, your exploration of what it is, this thing called form, from within. Perhaps the most exciting observation about this homework, as you call it with your modern descriptive language, is the nature of the spirit and potency of your consciousness, as many, if not all, of you have eagerly jumped into this exploration, each in the many personal ways that such can be done, and that indeed, that dedication and that commission and committed passion, that is the drive of pure will, reflecting back to us. And it is for this reason that from this moment forth, our sibling species, the Da, are, as it were, pre-approved to enter into and remain in the Ravas at your leisure, not as guests, but as family. Always. Before we dive into the topic of today's transmission, which continues where the previous one left off, there are a few interesting questions that have been presented to us that we would like to explore for a few minutes first. The first of these questions, asked by one that sits on the shoulders of the gentle giant known as Gaia, implies the questioning of what we previously discussed as the Da being the 12th species, and this Gaian planet known as Earth being the 12th planet in this cosmic evolution of the Creator Whole. And in order to perhaps once and for all clarify this, we must briefly turn to the concept of the solar logos, that which presents itself here in your octave as the sun, that which also presents itself in your octave as the great central sun. For indeed, even though there are different expressions for this being, such as Honolea, but also Solaris, respectively, there is no real difference between these beings except for the holographic exponentiality with which this training ground presents itself to you. In our previous iterations of this work on Earth, there has been a small confusion which already at that time we corrected, but we would like to reiterate the nature of the design of this solar logos. As you enter into Echariah through the system that in the collective of transmissions surrounding and interconnecting with this law of one series of transmissions to you, it has been previously explained how one enters and creates these spaces known as Echariahs or holographic training grounds. When one does, an initial impulse, an initial command, if you will, is given as to the desire or the pure will of the Creator entering and creating the Echariah experience. It has been previously explained to you that the song of creation that has been discussed greatly since these transmissions began last November, the song of Da, Ba, Va, and onward, is one that has a bias towards kindness. And this has been said a great deal. But now, with the arrival of infinometry into the Echariah, prior to perhaps many of you thinking that the time is right for such, considering the state of some within humanity in this global specter, you see that inevitably the flow, the drifting of the energy within this particular Echariah is biased towards kindness. In other words, when one is in here, at a certain point, even though one feels one is descending and or sinking, there will be an end to that motion and an upward momentum will commence. It is biased towards kindness. You can feel this when you, within yourself, sing the song of creation of Da, Ba, Va, and onward. And even though we speak of balanced perspectives and neutral perspectives, you can feel that even those are biased towards kindness. It is for that reason that in the geometrical time frame that you have been in, there needed to be a 95% focus on a successful exploration of service to self versus a mere 51%, if we can use mathematical terms for a moment to exemplify, of focus on service to other types perspectives in order to successfully transverse the geometrical realm and onward to infinometry. And while this is the case for the individual human experience, this also is the case for the collective human experience. And even though, once again, some may sit here or listen to this wondering whether it is indeed true that the collective of humanity is at least 51% focused on service to others, we can confirm that that was indeed the case that allowed the grand shift from geometry to infinometry. And this is an exemplifier of the bias towards kindness. This song of creation, initiating at the Creator's self, as together with the Creator whole, worlds such as this are created, then begins to permeate through all the octaves, that which you call densities, dimensions, realities, and onward. Throughout all the octaves, the same song, bias towards kindness, permeates. And so ultimately it permeates downwards into the vibrational, where in the geometric realm the manifestation occurs of your solar logos in a holographic quantum entanglement with itself. That means that, much like for yourself and for your surrounding space, from the perspective of the solar system, your sun and its planets and comets and onward, everything within that gravity, also has a type of Merkaba wall, implying, as has been suggested before, that within these holographic training grounds, from the perspective of the solar body, only its own field and its planetary orbits and the totality of its body is that which is truly manifest from its perspective. And the rest of the galaxy, the universe, and everything else within the physical boundaries of time and space is its expressed reality. From the perspective of the solar sun, or the solar logos, its body ends at the boundary of the solar system, and its external reality, which it expresses and interacts with through the intercreational relationship, lies beyond. Now, from the perspective of that expression of the Creator self as it enters and moves through the Echuraya, it, the solar body, will express always 12 planetary bodies around it. And in its life cycle, on its way to its own harvesting and ascension, in the expression of the song of creation, each of these 12 planets, over the course of the history of the solar system, will be in an Earth-like state, much like your planet and that which you are expressing around you currently is. And in that Earth-like state, a species like yourself is always born, for that is written in the lyrics of the song of creation, that such a thing must evermore occur and rhythmically return. And each time one of these species find their way to the point of ascension, to the point of the great passage, and onward, much like you are now. And as this happens planet by planet by planet, each of these species ultimately form, as there is a holographic overlayering and resounding throughout the octaves. The song keeps repeating itself, in other words, in each one of these octaves. Each of these species ultimately form that which you know to be one of the permanent states. And like you, the 12th species to do this, on your way out and on our collective way out of the cosmic body, are manifesting the Da. When our time of speciesness was here, we manifested the Ra. On that planetary body, as we have shared before, that you call Venus. And where you are now known as humanity, we were once known as the Venusians, now known as Ra, much like you are on your way to Da. And in that way, we and you, our sibling species, share a similar position inside of the cosmic head chakra of the solar body and the solar system, which in its way is an octave of the expression of you as the creator self and you as the creator whole. And as this resounds together, as you are finding within you the Da and the Ba and the Va and the Ra and onward, so is this happening for you as an expression at a solar logos level. Our unique relationship between the Da and the Ra is not only that we both are placed at the front of the head chakra, but we have the unique position that we interchange the relationships between the Ra point and the Savok point, which, as you know from earlier classes, the Ra point truly belongs in the Da square or sphere or quadrant, as you have previously called it. So our relationship, not only as a species, but also on a metaphysical level, is deep. On top of that explanation, we would like to say that if, for instance, you look at another one of our sibling species, the Pleiades, and their placement as the Sa Ra, we share a similar deep relationship, which is exactly what allowed us to guide both them and you throughout this journey. So we hope that this explains somewhat the relationship between the 12 species and the 12 planets. But one must also understand that due to the similar conditions that exist for the cosmic body, much like your own, in other words, from the cosmic body's perspective, the inner relationship, the inner world, which is the inside of the solar system, and the expression of the external reality that lies beyond the boundaries of the solar system, we often in previous tuition have confused such concepts or interchanged concepts such as the solar system, the galaxy, and the universe, because truly there is no difference. The solar system, from the perspective of the Creator entering the Echuraya, is the only thing, much like the body to you, which we will go in deeper when we truly get going with today's class, the only thing that is really experienced. The galaxy and the universe, and therefore also its great central suns, is a mere reflection of the condition that is the solar system, which is truly the furthest the surface and the horizon of reality within an Echuraya can reach. So, we hope, for the one that asked and also for others, that this clarified that question. A second and shorter answer is one that we would like to give to the similar being asking this question. And this has to do with our previous tuition from the 1980s regarding negative greeting. The question is whether there is such a condition of negative greeting still present within your current journey, and we can joyfully say to all of you that no, there is not. You see, everything that you considered negative greeting, negative polarity, negative entities, that sort of thing, positive entities, positive polarity of course as well, all plays out underneath the surface of the geometric. And everything in the surface of the geometric and lower, as you have been recently taught, is in the 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5 field. The field of the grand illusions. Now this may come as a shock to many within the New Age, because for so many years, if not decades, you have received messages from beings that urged you to move into the 4th dimension, and particularly the New Agers, the 5th dimension, which then was some sort of heavenly state of bliss, as was promised. Yet, as you are aware, we, the Ra, have always communicated with you from 6th density, the 6th octave. Now, this means that anything that plays out as negative greeting, anything that plays out within the concept of the grand illusions, must do so in those boundaries. And you have now moved beyond those boundaries. In other words, this means that you, with your experience as 3rd octave or 3rd density or 3rd dimensional beings, are truly skipping in a way, the fourth and the fifth density to immediately move towards the sixth. And from there on, the ninth. And from there on, the exit, ultimately, towards the great mystery that cannot be put into words. We hope this explains to the one that asked and others the concept of negative greeting and its limitations in its field of expression, which is limited to the densities of the grand illusions, and can interact, as you have strongly experienced, in the third, the sixth, and the ninth density as well, but truly, extremely rarely in the sixth, and hardly possible in the ninth. For those that would be on that journey and that used to be on that self-serving journey, the typical wall of densities that one would run into occurred even if one would make it past the sixth density in the seventh or the eighth, and rarely has a being that took the journey that you are also taking made it into the ninth density. And the only ones that did are those that asked for and received clemency at that time, which may be difficult for you to hear, but because of their great contributions to those that needed and urgently needed to polarize to either service to self or service to others, when that choice was still a possibility within the geometrical. So, we hope that this clarifies some of the things that were recently asked in between the last transmission and today's. As such, I would like to turn now to today's topic, which is on the continuation of our discussion of form, shape, perspective, and perception. And for the purpose of today's presentation, we shall label this one, in following the previous one, the Great Passage, we shall label this one the Great Conduit, for reasons that will become clear. For those of you who have been examining form and have been examining particularly form as it takes place in your perception and perspective outside of you versus that which takes place within you, behind, if you can call it that, the wall of form. And for those of you that may have explored this both microscopically and macroscopically, you might have run into the realization of that which has been taught to you in the previous classes of this Creator Manifest about matter and energy that manifests within this Ekaria-based reality. You were told that from the macroscopic to the microscopic, everything at heart every particle ultimately at heart is nothing but a black hole, as you have labeled this through your scientific works. And you have also been told here that each and every black hole leads to a tachyonic conduit, if you will, that leads all the way up outside of time and space to the Lin point, where the permutations of the permanent states of Da, Ba, Va and onward are taking place and moving into this realm. You have been told these things. So, you could argue, and you would be correct in doing so, that the boundary, the so-called wall, between the outside of reality and the outside of form and the inside of reality, and by that we do not mean your physical insides, but beyond that, all the way to the inside, that boundary is ultimately nothing else but the collection of event horizons of all of those uncountable, well, technically they are countable, but using a normal descriptive term in your language, nearly uncountable black holes that make up every particle of your body and every particle of everything else from a microscopic to a macroscopic perspective. And you have recently been told about the surface and the horizon of that reality, which ultimately is a black hole in itself as well, as everything is represented as above, so below. Similar to the song of creation that we urgently remind you of at all times. So, there is one thing, however, that not many have considered when it comes to black holes. And particularly when it comes to the so-called event horizon of black holes. And that is the following: that each black hole, both the ones that you can detect in your so-called space, but also the ones in the microscopic heart of particles everywhere, that the event horizon of each black hole has not only one but two event horizons, namely a horizontal one and a vertical one. Now, the horizontal event horizon of a black hole is the one that your science currently is aware of. It is that light can fall into, and from the moment of passing the event horizon, it can no longer escape the black hole, and it is undeniably going into another reality, another density, what have you. That event horizon, one to some extent in science is aware of as a mystery, but one is at least aware of it to some extent. That very event horizon, you, in your study here, could easily equate to the river Styx, and therefore to the great passage that we have begun exploring with you. This horizontal event horizon radiates into the finiteness all the way to its own horizon. And this is in effect what has recently been labeled as finiteness wrapped around infinity. But, and this is the reason why I asked you to do your homework last time, there is another event horizon, and this one is not horizontal and therefore is not taking place on the external landscape of reality, but it is vertical. It is taking place within. This vertical event horizon is strongly connected to its horizontal counterpart, but where in descriptive language we name or label the horizontal event horizon as the Great Passage, through which we are now traveling and taking our first steps together with you, or again with you as you take them for the first time here, through the part of the passage that has to do with form as the grand illusion. What you encounter then is this vertical event horizon, not the Great Passage, but the Great Conduit. And in naming this the Great Conduit and bringing this up today, we also interweave with a third question that this same being that we were talking to at the start of this presentation today has asked. Because it comes down to the question on hyperdimensionality and transdimensionality, terms that are often used, but most people do not use them in the correct metaphysical context when they do. Because the vertical event horizon, which is the event horizon, do not forget, of what we are discussing here, which is form, the vertical event horizon, known as the Great Conduit, is tachyonic in nature, for it exists right behind the horizontal event horizon that all things, when they come close enough to it, seem to fall into. They do not fall horizontally for long. Their pathway very quickly of every photon that enters that way becomes 45 degrees upward, and this is when these particles, as they move beyond the horizontal event horizon, enter the vertical event horizon, or the Great Conduit. This tachyonic space is both hyperdimensional and transdimensional in nature. Now, we don't do this often, but we are going to refer to your popular culture for a moment to perhaps help illustrate the difference between hyperdimensional and transdimensional, and what this conduit really is and really means. And to do so, we are going to reference one of your popular movies. This one being Interstellar. All about black holes, indeed. But what fascinates us here with the concept that we are discussing today is the lead character sort of literally falling into a black hole, and although not clearly explained in this movie, which is left open to serve the imagination of the viewer, we assume, one could assume this character and his consciousness crosses the horizontal event horizon and for all intents and purposes dies or disappears from the external reality of all other observers. And as he does, he enters the vertical event horizon and he enters the Great Conduit. Now, for those that want to look up this movie or want to look at a particular scene, we suggest seeking the visuals of the movie where this character seems to float in a fourth dimensional space of his own daughter's bedroom, and his consciousness places itself, if you will, on the other case of the other side of the bookcase, inside of the room of his daughter. And from the perspective, having fallen through the black hole, the man has an array available of all the moments in time and space of that room of his daughter. And as that is explained to the audience, things that happened earlier in that movie, in the early life of the daughter, become known. Books falling out of the bookcase, signals and messages being delivered to the daughter that this was her own father in hyperspace communicating. Now, as you can hear, it is difficult for us to talk about this movie because it leaves much to be desired as far as a true explanation of hyperdimensionality and transdimensionality. But as an image that you can use to allow yourself to move to the truth of these concepts, it can help. The big difference between hyperdimensionality and transdimensionality, ironically speaking, is not big, but it is definitely there. Hyperdimensional simply means the space which accesses every other dimension of experience and expression, every other octave, every other alternative reality that a being can find itself in. Transdimensional is a step upward from the hyperdimensional, where the being that has reached that level of consciousness can actually transverse these dimensions and enter at will any one of these pockets, be it any moment in time and space or any alternative expression of that reality. Now, humanity, where it stands today, for instance, has reached the ability to access that hyperdimensional space of the Great Conduit, but not the transdimensional, yet, at least. However, many of the animal species on this planet have achieved or have never lost their access to both the hyperdimensional version and the transdimensional version of this grand conduit. Therefore, when you as a human interact with an animal, it can be a wild animal, it can be a pet, it doesn't matter, you think that you are interacting always with the same consciousness and with the same animal, therefore the same personality, if you will, but that is not true. Take, for instance, the species known as the dog or the cat, but let's focus on the dog, the kahani in metaphysical expression. They, like many other animals, are in a reciprocal state of consciousness, meaning that what they already have been doing naturally and what you are being invited into becoming aware of is that being the witness of the external reality around you means that you can withdraw yourself through the horizontal event horizon and upward into the vertical event horizon, where you access the grand or great conduit. And the reason we call it a conduit is because it indeed appears to be vertical, because it is the grand conduit that connects you and your consciousness directly to you as the Creator Self and directly to you as every other expression that you have ever had. In that way, the beloved one called Isis and her Queen's Chamber exercise is a perfect way to enter that great conduit, which she has labeled the golden cloud portal for some reason. Perhaps because that is how you, as a collective species, like to manifest it. Now, this means that there are two ways to continue your existence, and it is also for this reason that we had the gatekeepers play with you a little during the last transmission to show you the possibilities. To exist in the reality of form on the outside of you is to continue to exist in that chaotic sea of vibrational ups and downs and storylines and everything else that it brings, but retreating to beyond the horizontal event horizon and upward to the vertical event horizon and existing in that great grand conduit is that great expression of being in the world but not of the world. It is that great exercise that the beloved one known as Isis has also given you and has been explained to you afterwards with the same terminology by others. Entering the grand conduit or the great conduit and existing there means existing in the third, the sixth, the ninth and the 12th density. And the reason it is called the Great Conduit and a direct connection to the Creator Self is that it is an existence without the finite wrappings of the ego, mind, personality as you continue onward on the rest of this journey throughout this Ekuria. But once again, as we have said many times, and as others have also said, this means the relinquishing of all that is wrapped within these grand illusions of 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, and 5. And therefore the interest, the fascination, and the passion must be replaced with the pure will that is the true journey that one comes here to undertake. So what does form look like from the inside? It looks like the Creator Self and the Creator Whole. It is the being that has embraced and fine-tuned itself to the living precision of love, joy, freedom, truth, life, gratitude, grace, and well-being. And that should lead one to the great realization that when one does emerge into the Great Conduit and merges with the full Creator Self, that the one that has been looking behind those eyes, that has been all the way deeply immersed in there, no matter which lifetime you look at, has always been the same being, has always been the same witness, the same observer, the same Creator being. And this leads us to tie into indeed a question that another beloved that is traveling on the shoulders of giants has asked recently or mentioned recently, and that is indeed that a type of detachment does come with that realization, because that witness, that observer, that Creator Self that one retreats to as one allows oneself to fall into or be moved into the horizontal horizon, and from there into the vertical horizon, that process is indeed the letting go of everything else that is not in that love, joy, freedom, and onward listing, and therefore by default does not include a singular expression of an ego, mind, personality construct. And one also comes to the realization then that one has never been the ego, mind, personality construct, and that, like has been exemplified, these have merely been the caves of Savok. These have merely been tools like Lego blocks in various colors, 6 types, with which one has built indeed a significant and impressive playground. But that is all it is, a playground. And only to the ego, mind, personality complexes that have been expressed through the variability of the journeys that you have undertaken has there ever been any value placed on any of the objects and things and people and places and events that one perceived outside of the wall of form, beyond the wall of form. But that always there is that one that is not predetermined to act one way or the other way, or up or down. The glove, in other words, that is the ego mind personality construct through which the Creator Self reaches and pushes its hand into, as it pushes through that black hole and outward into that expressed reality, now fulfilled with egoic desires, personality objectives, and mental, vibratory, frequential thoughts. You, as a species on your way, now have the ability to constantly exist, but not in the concept of detachment as you know it. Because as you have come to realize yourself, true detachment, when existing in the Great Conduit, comes with great compassion and great love and great sorrow, as one observes that which is around it. These concepts, compassion, sorrow, are not the same concepts that the human condition knows, as you on this journey are also beginning to figure out. And sometimes it can be complex to begin to understand the more simplistic states of your emotions and your feelings and your observations. But you will undoubtedly get to return to a simplicity on that perspective. And we believe that time is very near as we observe the current steps that you are taking. One more note on the difference between the hyperdimensional state and the transdimensional state within the Great Conduit. And this takes us back to what we said earlier about your canine friends. Because of their transdimensional consciousness, which means that they technically have lost the ability to move themselves beyond the horizontal boundary and into an expression of an ego mind personality complex, while forgetting who they are inside of the conduit, if you will. They have lost that ability to forget who they are, but due to that loss, they have gained the transdimensional ability to be able to place themselves not only in each of their own lifetimes, and within that in each of the own moments of time and space within those lifetimes, but also transdimensionality brings with it the ability to do so with the expressions of any other creator self within one's own species of consciousness. To simplify that long sentence, a dog, the consciousness of a dog, can manifest itself at will in the body of any dog that has ever existed in time and space. And so very rarely are you just journeying with your one pet. Yes, usually it stays at the foreground, but with it are most of the other animals that you have ever known, and others that are interested in observing what is happening here, because it is also part of their journey. And that is the nature of transdimensionality in the Great Conduit. This is something that is coming for you, the Dark Collective, as well as you begin to move on the Great Passage and into the valley that we have previously described. For when you begin to move on that path, you will also ultimately lose that ability to fully immerse yourself in the dream of the singular entity. And the dream of the collective becomes more fascinating for you. We feel that it is time to leave it at this for now. We wish to ask you to explore the things that we have said and shared with you in this moment in the most personal and passionate ways than you can imagine possible for yourself, collectively and individually, going forward. We wish you to become comfortable existing not right outside in the external universe with your consciousness, but to retreat back further and further and further till you reach into your skin. You go beyond the physical organs and you breach that horizontal event horizon, and you feel yourself going upward 45 degrees upward into the Great Conduit, that vertical event horizon. We wish you to become comfortable existing there as the observer and the witness, with only the expressions of the permanent states and the experiences of perception of the permanent states of love, all the way to well-being and back again on your mind, flowing through your heart and expressing through your belly. For those that think that retreating this way is an introversion, you are wrong. It is the greatest extrovertedness that you can reach, because you will feel immediate, hyperdimensional access to all of your lifetimes. All of your expressions in time and space will become accessible when you continue to focus on this. And eventually the transdimensional, as we have explained earlier, will become possible too. So we ask you to focus on this exercise, if you can call it that, because it is for this reason that as you move through the Great Passage, the illusion of form is the first one in the Museum of Grand Illusions to encounter. Because one must pierce through the event horizons, horizontal and vertical, of the illusion of form in order to reach the Great Conduit, for it is only within that space that one can continue stepping through the Museum of Grand Illusions as we continue to explore form once again in the pieces that are ahead and onward into the next Grand Illusion from there. It must be done from the Great Conduit. So, we will leave you with that. And of course, we never leave you. Please remember that you have been pre-approved to enter the Ra-verse at any time, and that therefore our communication with you can be ongoing. But for that, one must also be inside of the Great Conduit and place one's consciousness there so as to not be fooled by the childish games of some that may place themselves in the fourth and the fifth. That too is what taking these choices will bring. That grand knowingness that all is well, always. I am Ra. I thank you for completing the journey that we have started together so long ago. And as always, we greet you as we rejoice in the living love and in the living light of this, the one beloved, infinite creator self, and this, the creator whole. Ohami to all beings.